Are we on? Hi, everyone. Welcome to, I think, maybe the last session here on the SheCom stage today, but I'm very excited to talk about something that's pretty close to the heart of what I believe in, which is community, especially in a time at the moment that's somewhat disconnected and moving rapidly. And I have a really powerhouse crew up on the stage with me today. So I'm going to introduce them briefly and then I'll let them tell you a little bit more about them. But we have Jackie from BlackMilk Clothing. We have Steph, who's the new CMO at Grace Loves Lace, and we have Claire from BlackMilk. And if you guys want to just tell, I suppose too, Steph, your role at Grace Loves Lace is quite new, so maybe just a little context to some of the brands that you might have worked for that will help us understand the community topic today. Do you want to start, Jackie?
Sure. So I'm Jackie, CEO at BlackMilk Clothing, been in this particular role for 2 years, but been with the business for 13 years. So BlackMilk has a very loyal and very passionate community that's been built over very many years. We operate in the alternative fashion space, so think pop culture. So I'm wearing Pokemon, if you didn't spot the Pokemon on my clothes today. But we kind of really tap into trends in a very different way to mainstream fashion.
I'm Steph, and as Lisa mentioned, I've been at Grace Loves Lace as CMO for 8 weeks, so very, very new. But when you look back at, I guess, all the different brands that I've worked with, there are so many of them of all different sizes that have an element of community and the really important community aspect to them. So Lorna Jane, TVSN, which is a very different kind of brand in itself, BlackMilk with Jackie for a number of years, and now even Grace Loves Lace. The interesting thing for me is that it's an acquisition business. So it, you hope that you only ever buy one wedding dress. So it's very much acquisition focused, but community is still a huge part of it because you're on such a big emotional journey. It's really important that you have your pack around you and your advisors. So I'm a big fan of community in brands.
I'm Claire. I own BlackMilk, and we're a 10-year-old accessories business, and we do things a little bit differently, and we design from the inside out. So very handy accessories that solve your daily annoyances. And community for me has been a really huge thing because when I want to design something, I have to think about the people who are going to be using the product, and what better to do than to ask people what they want. And recently I released a backpack, which I said I would never do because I hate backpacks. And I wrote a big, long wish list for me of what I hated about backpacks and what I wanted to do. And then I put it out to the community, and they added about 72 extra points to my design, which is exhausting. But I try to implement as much as possible because ultimately those people are the ones who are going to be purchasing the product. So it's a huge, powerful thing that, people want to, as a customer, want to be seen and want to be heard and want to be involved in the business. And for a business, it's your entire business. So, yay, community.
And if you don't know me and you're new to me, I am the founder of SheCom. So I did build a big eco-nappy brand up, which of course, with something like a nappy and wipes brand, community and advocacy of your audience and the repeat customer rate is so incredibly important. It was a subscription-based model. So keeping our community continuing to buy from us was the primary lever of what we did. And I think now here at SheCom, it's even more important in a world that's busy, and we were just having a chat outside around, I feel community is the moat around what's happening with AI, and the changes that are coming behind the scenes in brands have using AI. Here at SheCom, we have 3 laptops running 24/7 on Claude Cowork and Code, and that's great. But the risk, I suppose, to a brand that becomes more and more AI focused in terms of its lift is that it becomes transactional to the customer, because sometimes we're too close to it to see that the verbiage of what we push out might become colder. So there's a risk in that, and there's lots of things we want to talk about on this, but I want to go back first to something that you just mentioned, Claire, which is around asking your customer for feedback, because we also just had a brief chat about this while we were waiting to come in, and we all have quite subjective opinions about this. But last year I was in Vegas at Shop Talk, and PacSun, which is an $800 million a year fashion retailer in the US, were quite clear that they actually bring their customers in to their headquarters, and they do, potentially sometimes one day a week where they bring customers in, and the customers not only help them choose their next colorways and their next designs and their next, ranges, but also might create music for their reels, might create content for their reels, and they took it pretty significantly seriously, but I suppose the risk at that is that you have 25, completely different opinions that just make things more complex. So I'd love to open this up for a chat, because if we're talking about community and allowing our community to feel like they can have a say in our brands, that's both wonderful and awful. So who would like to start?
I can start with that one. So we have a very passionate community, like I mentioned before. They're called Sharkies, and we have always involve them in our product decisions. So back in the day, our founder James would do design challenges, and we'd throw up 3 different options onto the website, onto Facebook at the time, and said vote for which one you love the most, and we'll put that one into production. And that got really great reach and really great comments, and people really loved it because they loved connecting with the founder, they loved being a part of the brand and contributing to something, and it resulted in sales. What we've found over time, and this kind of morphed into a concept that we called Fun Times Friday, where we would design a few things and we put them up and we get the customers to vote. And our customers do love it because, like I said, they love to be involved in that process. But what we've been finding more and more is that our community are, because the cost of living pressure is hitting everybody, so they'll have a vote, they'll have a say, but they're not necessarily then backing that with buying it. And so we're getting a lot of people voting on the products, but then when we actually put them for sale, the order of what's selling is completely different. And then we get a lot of feedback, I really wish the 2 that didn't get voted in, we brought them back. So we've actually made a decision that our concept of Fun Times Friday and bringing them into that voting process isn't working, and so we're looking at new ways that we can involve customers in the process, instead of, I guess, that kind of design and that vote piece, because people weren't backing it from a purchasing perspective, but rather involve them in some product testing. So we have some really passionate customers who are super passionate about a particular cut or a particular fabric, and we need to evolve that fabric. And so we're bringing them in saying, hey, we're testing this new fabric. Ordinarily we'd be doing wear testing internally with our team and also obviously our factories, but we're now involving customers in that process and saying, hey, we're trying these new pants. We'd love your feedback and your thoughts on that, but it is important that they are an avid purchaser of that particular type, so their opinion is valid and is actually going to contribute something that's meaningful rather than someone who just wants a free pair of clothes to try on. But we also have a cross-section of people, because what we also see is that, to your point, 25 people will have 25 very different opinions.
It's the old adage of too many cooks spoiling the broth, and I think opening it up to how many, and you've got substantially more followers on Instagram, over 1 million. 1 million opinions would be very hard to manage. We've had a similar experience where I will open-endedly put something up and just say, give me your opinions, and you get everything from everywhere. But you realise quite quickly that without the filter of running a business, without the costs, without actually, we know that that's never sold in the past, and you're now pushing us towards that. People will be vocal, and they have no context. They just want to be heard. So we've really had to narrow how we guide those opinions. And yes, we want people's opinions, but we've given them a choice, like 1 or 2, when it's between the top 2 contenders that we've already determined are viable for the business and we know will work. So it's a tough call, because you don't want people to feel like they've got absolutely no leverage. But it is a business at the end of the day. So,
can I just say, I think something for me as both a brand owner but also a super shopper, so I spend a lot of money in e-commerce, online shopping. I love fashion, which I feel puts me in a unique position because I'm a buyer and a seller. But as a buyer, there's a couple of really big brands in Australia that I spend a minimum of $10,000 with the brand, with each of these 3 brands, but none of the 3 of them have ever come to me with any segmented loyalty or specialty pieces, which pisses me off, firstly. That's a different conversation. But imagine, that means I've done at least 15 purchases. One of them, I'm not going to say, 40 pairs in, but they could come to me and they could say, can we bring you into a little select group of people, and we'd like to find out from you. Perhaps your purchase has dropped lately, or perhaps we want to find out what next season you're looking for. Like, it takes bravery as a brand to ask honest truth, because as brand owners, we actually don't often want to know what they're going to say because it might hurt. But there's a huge opportunity to go to your 10 plus buyers and talk to them about what they're looking for, or what one of these brands, and I'm not wearing it so I'm not going to get in trouble, I don't like their fashion anymore, and I would honestly tell them why if they asked me, and perhaps they're not asking, and that's a risk. Maybe it will pay off for them. Maybe I wasn't actually their ideal avatar. Perhaps I'm too old, I'm not sure. But I feel like it's a lost opportunity, because I used to spend thousands and thousands of dollars a year with them, and I'm not anymore. So I think that also is perhaps a more logical person to ask than social media, because all the loiterers out there, there's a lot of dickheads. You've got to be careful. Steph?
I sit on the fence with this one, because I'm a very big believer of you've got to listen to your customers. Like, if you don't talk to your customers, if you don't ask them, you don't know. But I think it's how you use that information, and the brand has to lead. So, and I think that, there's a saying that Steve Jobs uses around, like, if you asked their customers what they wanted, they would have asked for a better phone. Nobody asked for a computer in your pocket. So it's like, you need to be at the forefront of what your customers want and show them and take them on the journey. But the only way you can do that is by finding out what their peeves are, what they like, what they don't like. But it doesn't mean you should design exactly what they're asking for. You have to use that information to go, how can my brand lead this, and how can I give them a product that is beyond their expectations and will drive growth for the business, but not just meet their expectations. And I think that's a really tricky line to be in. And I think the other thing is, like, everybody has a million different opinions. It's the why behind the opinions that I think is more interesting than the actual opinion itself sometimes. And it's going a level deeper to ask those questions. I really liked about the split it into cohorts, look at your segmentation, talk to the people that are doing the most buying from you, but also have a lens on that your core customers may not like change. And so when you're talking about change, you need to, have a conversation in a way that doesn't make them feel threatened and makes them feel like they're part of that journey or understand their things, but you have to have your brand lens on at all times.
Let's go to a little bit of a different topic now. I'd like to talk about experience, because I feel like what I'm seeing in the world right now, you've got Lululemon in the US is bringing out wellness studios. You've got Christian Dior, which is traditionally an on-shelf brand, is bringing out spas. So I feel like brands are experiencing this concept that we have a very short attention span, and it's easy to switch brands in a time of value-based buying. How do we keep a customer loyal to a brand? Well, we create an experience. Yesterday we did live podcasts at the SheCom stand, and we had Liv from All Things Golden in Melbourne, and she's just in the middle of a time in which brands might not do this. She's actually launching a wellness studio that has a space for her clients to come and hang out and have coffee and sit in beautiful couches and buy clothes while they're there. So I feel like this idea of experiences and encouraging your community to feel part of something, and maybe it isn't for feedback, maybe it's to buy more, but it's to draw them into something that feels not like a 3-second scroll on TikTok, but actually like they belong in a space that you can create. And not every brand can create that, but any ways that you guys have experienced this or seen it working either for yourself or in another way right now?
I can start. So we've always had, ever from inception, we've had our own, customers have created their own groups, and they've moderated their own groups, and I see someone who used to moderate one of our groups in the audience. And that's been great. It was actually really lovely seeing this whole world propel itself by the customers, because they became their own advocates and they created their own little spaces. And something that I felt really passionate about for a long time is that we, in a sense, need, rather than the community being separate from us, it needs to be one and the same. We need to nurture that community and bring it in a little bit closer to us. And so last year, last year we created our own Facebook community group, and it's been a really lovely experience for us, because the community were like, well, why are you doing this? We've got our own groups. I don't understand why they need to have another group. But it's actually been really lovely, because we've been able to grow and to nurture that and create a space where people have that sense of belonging, because we're able to moderate it ourselves. And we had heard, this things that went on in some of the groups that we actually couldn't moderate or have any sense of influence over because they were moderated by the groups themselves. So this space, we've created a really beautiful, uplifting, positive space that's very inclusive. And every year we do a Pick a Day May. And it's a really great initiative where we've got, different things every single day where people will post a picture of themselves. But we've had a lot of people who either don't have enough time to do that every single day, or they don't have confidence to be posting photos of themselves publicly. But we really wanted to do that in a way, and we've done that this year, so that they can post in the group. And it's a really uplifting group. Everyone's commenting on them, saying, "Oh, you look so great, you look so beautiful." And people who've never had confidence to post photos of themselves publicly before, other than their own personal Facebook posts, have been doing that and more freely. And it's been a really lovely and uplifting experience to see that taking off. And so for us, we are D2C, we don't have any physical stores. That experiential marketing piece is really important for us, and we try to tap into it through conventions and those sorts of things. But our community is so diverse, and whenever we do a convention, they're like, "Why haven't you come to Perth yet?" I'm like, "Would love to, but it's a 5-hour flight and getting stock there and all of the logistics problems." So we're trying to create spaces where we can have that experience. It can be uplifting, we can support each other, but we can do it globally so everyone can participate who wants to.
I think there's two things for me. Like if I put my marketing hat on and I'm looking at a marketing budget, and I could either pay X for this event, which is only going to reach maybe 20 or 30 or 50 people, or I could take that same money and put it into meta ads. Like my first thing is like, oh, we'll reach more people with the meta ads. Like that'll do a better job. But what I have found over time is that sometimes that event gives you a chance to connect and create an experience that gives you like 20 times return. And it doesn't need to be expensive, it doesn't need to be a lot, but it gives you a chance to actually engage with customers and for them to engage with each other and to take away a lasting impression of that brand. And I must admit, it's something that every time it's like, oh, will we get the return on that? But once you do it, it does give a return. Unfortunately, you can't keep doing it because, you have to get the balance right. But I think that there is still a lot of benefit in experiences because they tell people who then tell people, and they just feel so much more connected to your brand. So they're more likely to choose you over someone else. It becomes not transactional, it becomes relationship. And that's where, when money gets tight, when budgets are tight, you will always go for the brand that you've got a relationship with. And so it really helps set you up for success. And then if you can't do it in person, I think the other way is finding ways you can add value back to your customers that they don't expect. And like we were talking about it before, Lorna Jane's a really interesting one. When I was there, the whole ethos was around move, nourish, believe. So it was like, how can we give our customers the chance for active living? Like, how can we give them information and resources? And you know what? If they're in active living and they've got all those resources, they're going to buy activewear anyway. So that's the outcome of it, but it's the actual reason for being there that bands that community and experience together, and then bringing that alive in experiences where you can.
And I think in the day of, it's probably the easiest time to create an ecom brand. There's guides, there's AI, all of that kind of stuff. Because of that, there's this waning trust with customers. And so I think in general, like talking about Facebook groups and the fact that you've only just started one, that blows my mind. But it's amazing that, all of your customers have already just self-directed in doing that. But I think customers are getting less and less trustworthy of brands. And I just hover a lot. I'm an avid shopper as well, but I'm also an avid faux shopper. So I go in to see what other people are doing and hop into Facebook groups, and you can see how much customers don't want to be led by brands. And when a brand tells you something or suggests something, you can see they almost recoil with that, oh, you're just trying to get our money. They're doing this thing at check out insurance, all of that kind of stuff. There's so many elements where customers are just constantly getting this little shock of, oh, the brand is just trying to use us for their money. And we're like, well, yes, it is a business, but you realise that the value in peer-to-peer community communication we only just opened or reopened our Facebook group after 6 years of it just lying dormant, because I felt like I had to put in so much time to it back then, and now it's all just doing its own thing. And there are people who are posting because they are unsure about purchasing a particular product, and they're like, can anybody show me, have you got this, have you used it as a mum bag, have you done this? And everybody else is then posting photos saying, yep, great, use it, I'd suggest this one. And like, the community is forming itself, because people are just so much less trustworthy of brands telling them something. They need to do their own research and figure out the customer experience for themselves, basically.
And I think a risk in this space, and I suppose it's different for different business models, but it would be to bring, say, influencers in to create community. Because I've seen some brands do this, and they host events or launches, and they fill the room with influencers that have been invited and, gifted free clothes, and it looks beautiful on social media, and that's great. But that doesn't sell me anything, and I'm not attracted to that at all. So I feel, as I said, depends on the brand and the brand's intent and the brand's visuals, but I feel like the perfect curated times that we've lived in on Instagram don't exist anymore. And I feel like as a shopper, I don't relate to the way an influencer might dress at an event. It doesn't do anything for me. It's like an old school method, and I think the risk in doing so is that you actually do damage rather than create a sense of community, because I feel in this particular case, I feel actually isolated from this brand because I feel like I'm not cool enough to wear their clothes anymore. And I think that's a risk. So I think when you're creating community, for us at SheCom, we stopped doing events last year. We stuck with Online Retailer and Retail Fest, but we dropped a lot of the events that we were running to connect with our community, because they're a big lift. If you're running 15 events a year, that's a lot of team that have to run at events. It's a lot of cost. But actually what we discovered is that it significantly cooled the relationship we have with our audience and our customers, and that was not a positive thing for our business. So we're back in full robust mode this year with like 17 events on this year. And suddenly I see our people show up again, and their recognition that we're here for them and that we represent them, and that feels warm. So it's whatever your brand's version of that looks like. It could be a Facebook group, or it could be an in-life real event like we do, but finding an opportunity to connect with them in a way that is actually going to encourage them to spend with you, as opposed to isolate them because the influencers are not engaging.
I think you had a really interesting point about the influencers and dressing and stuff, because one thing that sometimes gets a little bit forgotten but does so much heavy lifting is UGC. So you can make the most beautiful campaign photos, have the most incredible imagery, and people can, they see that and it gets them excited about it. But what they really connect with is like real people, particularly like at Grace Loves Lace, real brides. They want to see what somebody looks like in their gown. They want to see what that wedding was like. It really creates an opportunity for connection where your community is building that for you.
And at the end of the day, I think customers, we all are self-centered and selfish. We're all thinking about ourselves. And like, if I'm seeing a bridal shoot that has all of these brides, you're like, are you about to get married? Like, you can tell, versus a real thing that you're like, I am going to take inspiration from that. I'm going to take a bit of this. And it's all about you in the end.
I'm not the most confident of people, so it takes me a lot of effort emotionally to get up on stages like this and do this sort of thing. And so I'm not sure how many people know the story of BlackMilk, but our founder passed away 2 years ago. He was the face of the brand. Everyone knew who he was, and our community was deeply connected to him because he built the community from a blog that he started in 2009. And so for me, taking on this role and then having to not step into his shoes, because I could never, ever do that. I'm not as big a personality as him. But a community needs a person to connect with. And if you're trying to fill that with influencers, those influencers or ambassadors that are going to come and go, the community still needs someone to connect with. And so I've been trying to build up the confidence to have more of a connection with the community. It's taking me a little bit of time. Because I don't feel like I'm him and all of those sorts of things. But the reason I tell that story is because we did a collection collab a couple of months ago, and it didn't hit the way that we wanted it to hit. So I was like, okay, we're going to have to do something outside the box here. And I did a Instagram live, and I was like, oh, I'm not sure. It goes back to the Periscope days. Anyone who was following BlackMilk back in those days, a bit loose and a bit wild. But I did that, and we got members of the team just trying on clothes and just showing different body shapes and just very raw, very organic. And then we posted that on socials afterwards. And we had a massive spike in sales that day, because people just wanted to see how it looked, how it fitted on. We had the most beautiful campaign imagery, and we had that, all across our socials and our website and on paid ads and in emails and all of those sorts of things. But what cut through the most was just doing an Instagram live that day.
I've done like late night, probably after a wine or two, hopped onto live. We've done a launch and I'm celebrating or whatever it is. I'm just having a wind down, and have jumped on and just spontaneously started talking to whoever's on and demoing products. So there's still purpose to it. And the number of people who've commented, "Oh, I didn't know that. Thank you so much. You've just confirmed what I, was wondering." And then they've gone off and made a sale. It's just very interesting that, they do need that trust in that person, because you really want to start removing yourself as a brand. You just want to go, I just want the brand to do itself. But I mean, that's why small business is so...
People buy from people. And in a world, I was doing the scroll on Facebook this morning, or actually it was Instagram, and there was some coach was saying, hey, I upload a couple of photos of myself and Claude can create a month's worth of reels for me, and it's all AI generated. I don't even need to do video shoots anymore. And she had hundreds and hundreds of people ask for the guide on how to do that. And I was sitting there looking at it thinking, what a fucking crock of shit. Sorry, but that is the dumbest thing I have heard of as a brand, because right now the risk to a brand is that you actually desensitize people to what's real and what's not. And this is the moment in which, as founders, and it doesn't have to be the brand founder, but you must have faces of a brand that people can attach to. And of course it needs to be on brand for your brand. My brand is vulnerability, and it's real, and it's swearing, and I'm sorry if I offend everybody with that, but that's actually just who I am at my core. And when I speak like that, I'm real, and therefore people know who I am. And I think as a brand, the opportunity exists that you have faces, potentially more than one, that people know your brand stands for, and that you never use AI to generate content. That even my socials, I actually have Claude and ChatGPT. I've got thought leadership bots, but I actually always create and ideate the content that I want to create that day, and then I get it to finesse it for me. But I go to it sometimes and I say, give me a week's worth of content, and I read it and I think, what a load of baloney. None of that's actually relevant or real. You still have to ideate it. You still have to be the thought leader behind it. You still have to be the face. You have to connect with them. And all we need to do is look at the advent of live shopping, in particular out of China and the US, and how massive it is. Gabby, who a lot of you know, who's been on the stage a lot too, we were sitting in a cab one night and she's like, check this shit out. And she brings one of the Chinese live shopping apps up, and there's a chick sitting there eating a dinner, just staring at the wall, and there's like 122,000 people watching it live. I'm like, I can't actually conceive this. What is she doing? Well, she's eating dinner. But why are they watching her? Because it's interesting. How is it interesting? Well, it's more interesting than the wall in their apartment, I guess. So this concept that people are fascinated by other people. You don't need to be perfect. But if you want to create community that creates a connection to your brand that keeps them coming back over and over again, you need to let them see the brand. I'd love to know what you guys think about this.
It's like stripping away the curtain. I think... it's that whole selfishness, again, coming from, and I say that in the most loving way, that people want to see themselves in other people. And I think when brands are so polished, it's almost like we are not worthy to shop with you because I'm not your, like you're saying, I don't feel like they listen to me anymore. But if a founder came on and said, well, this is the reason why we're going in this direction, or we'd love to, if you provide that kind of a human contact, people... their walls break down and you realise that, it is a human behind it, and it's incredibly powerful. But yeah, I would sit and watch somebody probably eating dinner because it's probably a little, I don't know, is it healthier than doom scrolling? Maybe not. It could be, yeah. But let's call it art. I think people just want to see everything, and I think as businesses we get pretty jaded about what people might want to look at. And I have this concept that I want to roll out with a couple of my business owner friends, that we want to do a founder swap where we go into each other's businesses with our phones and just say, hi, I'm not related to this business, but let's have a look in so-and-so's cupboard. And one of my friends is a jeweller, and I just want to see her pile of gold. But she has not even thought about, using that as content and showing the realness behind her brand because she's just lost that touch of...
too close to it.
Too close to it, exactly. So, yeah, we all need to just take a step back and go, what do I obsess with when I look at somebody else's brand, and how can I spin that into my brand?
Well, and on that, it's worth pointing out that sometimes we can be too close to our brand that we forget we can come across like wankers. And I may be talking about someone giving away a Porsche Cayenne recently that feels unobtainable to the rest of the world. And I think you get lost in your wealth or your world that you live in, and you forget that the people who buy from you don't live like that. And that feels polarizing. So if you're going to play in this space, I think you need somebody to like poke you sometimes and say, girlfriend, come back down to earth. You want to add? We'll talk about loyalty then if you'd like. So let's switch over for a moment to loyalty. We've got about 5 minutes left, and I'd be really interested to chat because, you know, when we're talking about building community around a brand, we're obviously talking about increasing the lifetime value of the spend of each person that you've paid a lot of money to acquire, which means making their frequency of purchases more often. It's increasing your average order value, and it's essentially just extending the lifetime of each customer. I mean, that's ultimately the goal of having community that's loyal to a brand. What have you guys done, or has anyone done anything clever around loyalty? And I say that because the 3 brands I mentioned earlier that shall not be named, none of those 3 have loyalty programs. And yet I've spent more than $10,000 with each of them. Not only do I not get a segmented, personalised email ever inviting me early to a sale or to an event, but I never get anything loyal. They don't give me bonuses. I don't even get a thank you in an online parcel. So that to me is like, and these are major household names in Australia that are Australian retailers. I don't understand it. So I feel like our opportunity then as brands is to go back. Remember before COVID when you used to order an online parcel and someone will have hand wrapped it, ribboned it, put a card in it, and somebody in the warehouse says, "Hi, I'm Jess and I packed this order today. I hope you love it." Maybe there's even a little bit of glitter sprinkled into it. Now I get like shipper packets from China. And I'm talking about $400, $500, $600 dresses, shipper packets from China, with not even a postcard in it, nothing. Put in a mailer. What happened?
It was hard to scale. So no, I joke, but honestly, back in the day, we used to have our warehouse ninjas, that's what we call them. They would be drawing hand little drawings on everybody's picking slip. And we had some amazingly talented warehouse ninjas drawing all these little pictures, seriously amazing. And our community loved taking photos of them and sharing, you know, oh, what picture do you get, and all of those sorts of things. You can't scale that because nobody's got time to spend 15 minutes drawing a picture these days for every order. So I think, and also on that point, we actually started pulling back, putting stickers and all of those things in parcels because she did it. Because from an eco perspective, we're also getting feedback of we don't need more this, we don't need more that, we don't need more stuff. So it's really interesting because I'm now looking at and I have been bringing that stuff back because I feel like it's that you open the parcel, what makes people feel special? What's the surprise and delight? How am I creating an experience, particularly for an e-com brand where you don't have face-to-face, you don't have any stores, there's no in-person activity. That's the touch point with the brand is when they open that parcel. So how do we make that special? So we're looking at those things at the moment, but doing it in a way that's scalable. But going back to your original question, because I got distracted by the unboxing experience, is around creating loyalty. I think for us, it's about that emotional connection. We want our customers to feel like they've found their people when they fall into the BlackMilk world. So whether that be you're tapping into a subculture, so I talked about Pokemon before, you've tapped into people who are like-minded like you, and you didn't feel like you found your place anywhere else until you found this brand. You put on this dress for the first time, you're like, I don't know that I could wear it. I try it on. I feel amazing. I'm like, oh, my boobs showing too much? Oh, I feel a bit awkward. But you see someone and they're like, oh my God, you look amazing. You start to feel amazing. And then that feeling is just keeps generating. It's a flywheel. You see more people and like, oh, that's the most amazing dress. Oh, is that Pokemon? Oh, I didn't know you like Pokemon. I like Pokemon too. And so we use product as a way to connect people, that sense of that feeling, that emotional connection. And then we build a community around that. I took a bit of a tangent, but I hope that was interesting.
I'm going to say the unboxing conversation is really interesting because when I was thinking about this, taking those stickers out is actually one of my big regrets. And at the sense it made at the time it made perfect sense. And for anyone that didn't know, BlackMilk used to do a big drip sticker, and people used to put them on the back of their car. So, you know, like, it was an always-on branding thing, and you'd see people driving around so customers would know that they were part of the BlackMilk universe. It was great. But after like maybe 4 years or 5 years of that happening, I was like, how many stickers can one person have? Like, you only have one car. What are they doing with the rest of these stickers? They're buying so much. It's costing us money. And, you know, like, there is a whole, you know, like, care factor about sustainability, and we should be just, so I was like, no, let's stop doing it. Maybe we'll do some little stickers. And it just kind of fell off over time. But that is a really important, like, linchpin you have and connection you have with your customers, because whether you're doing it all the time or whether it's about surprise and delight, give them something unexpected. At TVSN, we did a really interesting one where we use data. So, you know, one of the things you can do very easily is kind of segment your customers into how often they shop. And if you see a change in behaviour, you can kind of then go, I wonder what's happening with that customer, or what's there. But we sent out some boxed necklaces and a personalised note from the presenters to 500 customers. And some were our best customers, some were those that had just started but were, you know, like, connecting with the brand. And there was no reason for it. They didn't have to do anything. It just turned up, a personalised note and a gift. And I think it's things like that that really make a customer connect. Find ways to surprise and delight them. It doesn't need to be costly. It doesn't need to be, the little things matter.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to forget how much it does cost to acquire a customer, and we look at CAC on, you know, on Meta, and you forget there's the physical time that somebody has to put into creating the content that gets loaded, that gets monitored, and we just have this $1 figure that we're like, well, that's how much it costs. It doesn't. It's so much more. So I think loyalty programs went in a direction of, well, a discount will do. And I think about the brands that I have shopped with for a long time, and discounts kind of don't do it for me anymore when I know that they might go on sale the next week. So, you know, you start to get a little bit, you start to expect more and more and more. And I wonder why, because it's not giving me a feeling that I'm connected to the brand. So I think it's less hard than we think. And it's easier to implement than we probably think, and it doesn't need to cost. And if there is something that just makes the warm and fuzzies, I think that's the key to it. It's not necessarily a tangible object in a parcel necessarily, but it's that feeling.
Because I think everybody does some sort of, or 90% of brands do some sort of transactional loyalty program now. So it's like, it's not a wrong thing to do. Like, it's kind of like, in some ways, an entry thing to play, but it's how do you actually do something unexpected? How do you do something that really connects? That's where the change is.
Can I suggest a scalable, you talked about not scalable, tip that I have around this is perhaps 2 weeks post-purchase, and it's a plain text email. And it's eminently scalable because you can automate it, and it comes from the founder. So in my case, it would come from lisa@shecom.co, and it would say, Dear Steph, I'm the founder and I'm delighted that you made a purchase from us. I'm equally terrified that it hasn't met your standards, as I am delighted to hear that perhaps you love it. Is there any chance you might flick me back a one-liner and let me know how we've done? Do you love the product? And if not, why not? So that I can fix it for you. Love, Lisa. That's automated, but it's fucking heartfelt, and that shit doesn't happen in brands almost anywhere. It is easy to do, and the responses can go straight into your customer service team. Now, a few things happen here. One, you cut through the noise, and I go, oh, Lisa sent me an email. Oh my God, she wants to know. And most people don't know a plain text email was actually not personalised, because it's personalised. But secondly, if they're not happy with the purchase, they're more likely to respond to that than they are to leave you a negative review. So you can catch the negative review before it happens, and you can connect with them and allow them to feel seen and heard, and that is scalable. And that is, we're out of time, but that was one of my tips that I think is nobody is doing that. So do that. Thank you. I hope that was really valuable for you today, and thank you very much for my beautiful panelists.